Chapter 22, Part 2 of Social Statics by Herbert Spencer. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Social statics, or the conditions essential to human happiness, specified, and the first of them developed, by Herbert Spencer. Chapter 22, The Limit of State Duty. Section 8. But we have not sufficiently considered the infinite presumption discernible in this attempt at regulating all the doings of men by law. To make up for defects in the original constitution of things, this is the meaning of the scheme nakedly stated. It is said of a certain personage that he wished he had been consulted when the world was being made, for that he could have given good advice; and not a little historical celebrity has attached to this personage in virtue of his so thought unparalleled arrogance. Shallow, shallow! Why, the greatest majority of our statesmen and politicians do as much every day. Advice, indeed! They do not stop at advice. They actively interpose, take into their own hands matters that God seems to be mismanaging, and undertake to set them right. It is clear to them that social wants and relationships have been so carelessly provided for that without their vigilant management all will go wrong. As for any silent influences by which imperfections are in process of being removed, they do not believe in them. But by a commission, a staff of officers, and a parliamentary grant, every deficiency shall be made good, and the errors of omniscience be rectified. In truth, it is a sad sight for any one who has been, what Bacon recommends, a servant and interpreter of nature, to see these political schemers with their clumsy mechanisms trying to supersede the great laws of existence. Such an one, no longer regarding the mere outsides of things, has learned to look for the secret forces by which they are upheld. After patient study, this chaos of phenomena into the midst of which he was born has begun to generalize itself to him, and where there seemed nothing but confusion he can now discern the dim outlines of a gigantic plan. No accidents, no chance, but everywhere order and completeness. One by one exceptions vanish, and all becomes systematic. Suddenly what had appeared an anomaly answers to some intenser thought, exhibits polarity, and ranges itself along with kindred facts. Throughout he finds the same vital principles ever in action, ever successful, and embracing the minutest details. Growth is unceasing, and though slow, all-powerful, showing itself here in some rapidly developing outline, and there, where the necessity is less, exhibiting only the fibrils of incipient organization. Irresistible as it is subtle, he sees in the worker of these changes a power that bears onwards peoples and governments regardless of their theories and schemes and prejudices, a power which sucks the life out of their lauded institutions, shrivels up their state parchments with a breath, paralyzes long venerated authorities, obliterates the most deeply graven laws, makes statesmen recant, and puts prophets to the blush, buries cherished customs, shelves precedents, and which, before men are yet conscious of the fact, has wrought a revolution in all things, and filled the world with a higher life. Always towards perfection is the mighty movement, towards a complete development and a more unmixed good, subordinating in its universality all petty irregularities and fallings back, as the curvature of the earth subordinates mountains and valleys. Even in evils, the student learns to recognize only a struggling beneficence. But above all, he is struck with the inherent sufficingness of things, and with the complex simplicity of those principles by which every defect is being remedied, principles that show themselves alike in the self-adjustment of planetary perturbations, and in the healing of a scratched finger, in the balancing of social systems, and in the increased sensitiveness of a blind man's ear, in the adaptation of prices to produce, and in the acclimatization of a plant. Day by day he sees a further beauty. Each new fact illustrates more clearly some recognized law, or discloses some inconceived completeness, contemplation thus perpetually discovering him to a higher harmony, and cherishing in him a deeper faith. And now, in the midst of his admiration and his awe, the student shall suddenly see some flippant red tapist get upon his legs and tell the world how he is going to put a patch upon nature. Here is a man who, in the presence of all the wonders that encompass him, dares to announce that he and certain of his colleagues have laid their heads together and found out a way to improve upon the divine arrangements. Scarcely an idea have these meddlers got of what underlies the facts with which they propose to deal, as you shall soon find on sounding their philosophy. And yet, could they carry out their pretensions, we should see them self-appointed nurses to the universe. They have so little faith in the law of things, and so much faith in themselves, that were it possible they would chain earth and sun together, lest centripetal force should fail. Nothing but a parliament-made agency can be depended on, and only when this infinitely complex humanity of ours has been put under their ingenious regulations, and provided for by their supreme intelligence, will the world become what it ought to be. Such, in essence, is the astounding creed of these creation-menders. Section 9. Consider it, then, in what light we may, morally or scientifically, with reference to its practicableness, or as a question of political prudence, or even in its bearings upon religious faith. We find this theory, that a government ought to undertake other offices besides that of protector, to be an untenable theory. It has been shown that if the maintaining of rights be regarded as the special function of the state cannot fulfil any other function without a partial loss of power to fulfil its special one. When, from another point of view, the state is looked upon as an aid to adaptation, we still find that it cannot exceed its duty of guarding men's liberties, without becoming a hindrance to adaptation instead of an aid. It turns out that to abolish the limit of legislative interposition now contended for, is in fact to abolish all limits whatever, is to give the civil power a field of action to which no bounds can be fixed, save in some arbitrary and utterly unphilosophical way. Moreover, even, could certain supplementary affairs, considered fit for government supervision, be duly distinguished from the rest, there would still be the fact that all experience shows government to be an incompetent manager of such supplementary affairs. It is further urged that the system of extended official control is bad because unfavourable to social stability. And finally, that system is repudiated as involving an absurd and even impious presumption. Such, then, are the general arguments brought forward to prove that whilst the state ought to protect, it ought to do nothing more than protect. By the abstract thinker they may perhaps be deemed conclusive. There are others, however, with whom they will weigh comparatively little, and for the conviction of these it will be needful to examine in detail each of the several cases in which legislative superintendence is commonly advocated. Let us now proceed to do this. End of chapter 22. Part 2.